Clara's knees hit the frozen ground. Her baby had stopped crying. That silence terrified her more than the blizzard, more than the wolves howling somewhere in the darkness, more than the certainty that she would die tonight in this God-forsaken Montana wilderness. Sammy's lips were blue. His tiny body had gone still against her chest. "No, no, no." She clawed at her coat, trying to press him closer to her skin. Her fingers were frozen, useless. Dead things at the ends of her arms. Then she heard hoofbeats cutting through the screaming wind. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to our channel and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The rider came out of the white wall like death itself. Clara tried to scream. Nothing came out but fog. "Ma'am?" A man's voice, rough and urgent. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" She couldn't stand. Her legs had quit working somewhere between the broken stagecoach and this frozen hell. All she could do was clutch Sammy against her chest and watch the dark shape dismount and run toward her. Boots crunched through snow. A man dropped to his knees in front of her. She saw broad shoulders, a hat pulled low, and eyes, gray-blue eyes that went wide when they saw the bundle in her arms. "How long?" he demanded. What?" "Your baby. How long since he stopped crying?" Clara's mind was sluggish, frozen like the rest of her. I don't know." "Give him to me." She jerked back. "No, ma'am." His voice dropped low, steady. The voice of a man who had seen death before and wasn't afraid of it. "Your body's too cold to warm him. Mine ain't. Give him to me or he dies. Right here, right now, you choose." Clara looked down at Sammy's face. Blue lips, closed eyes. So still. God forgive her, she handed over her son. The stranger moved fast. He ripped open his coat, tore at his shirt buttons, and pressed Sammy directly against his bare chest. Then he wrapped everything closed again. Coat shirt, baby one living cocoon of warmth. "What's his name?" Samuel. Sammy. Sammy. The man looked down at the small face against his skin. "Listen here, Sammy. You ain't dying tonight. You hear me? Not tonight." He turned back to Clara. His eyes swept over her blue lips, her shaking hands, the frost crystallizing on her eyelashes. "Can you stand?" "I tried. I can't." "Then we do this the hard way." He grabbed her arm, hauled her up, and when her legs buckled, he caught her around the waist and half-carried her toward his horse. "Get your foot in that stirrup, now." Clara tried. Her boot slipped off the ice-covered metal. Again. She tried again. Failed again. The stranger swore under his breath something she couldn't quite hear over the wind, then simply lifted her and threw her over the saddle like a sack of flour. Before she could protest, he mounted behind her and rearranged her so she sat sideways against his chest. "Hold on to my coat. Don't let go." "Where?" "Cabin. Mile out. Now shut up and stay awake." He kicked the horse into motion. The ride was agony. Every jolt sent pain shooting through Clara's frozen limbs. The wind cut through her wet clothes like knives. She couldn't feel her feet anymore, couldn't feel her hands, but she could feel Sammy's small body between them pressed against the stranger's chest. Still. So still. "Talk to me," the man commanded. "About what?" "Anything." "Where you from?" Kentucky. Louisville." "Long way from home." "Home's gone." Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. "Husband's dead. Money's gone. Everything's gone." "Where were you headed?" "Silver Creek. My aunt had land here. She died. I inherited." The stranger's arm tightened around her. "Margaret Whitfield." Clara's heart lurched. "You knew her." "Everyone knew Miss Whitfield." A pause. "She was a good woman." "I never met her. She was just letters, stories." Clara felt tears freezing on her cheeks. She was supposed to be our fresh start. She will be. How can you? Because you ain't dying tonight either. Not you, not your boy. His voice was iron, absolute. I didn't ride through this hell to deliver corpses. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he couldn't promise that, but she was so tired, so cold, and his certainty was the only warm thing left in the world. She closed her eyes. Hey. He shook her. I said stay awake. Trying. Try harder. What's your name? Clara. Clara McAllister. I'm Eli Brennan. Now tell me about Kentucky. Clara McAllister. Tell me about Louisville. So she did. She talked about the Ohio River and the magnolia trees, and the boarding house where she'd worked before Daniel. She talked about her mother's piano lessons, and her father's bookshop, and the way summer thunderstorms used to rattle the windows of her childhood bedroom. She talked until she ran out of words. And then finally she saw lights through the snow. The cabin was small. One room with a stone fireplace, a bed in the corner, a table with 2 chairs. But there was wood stacked by the hearth, and the embers of a recent fire still glowing. Eli kicked the door shut behind them and deposited Clara in a chair by the fireplace. Don't move. He was already building up the fire, adding logs with quick practiced movements. The flames caught and grew, throwing shadows across the walls. Then he unbuttoned his coat. Clara held her breath. Sammy's face emerged pink now instead of blue. His tiny features scrunched in displeasure at being disturbed. And then he cried. A thin, reedy wail that grew stronger with each breath. Clara burst into tears. Give him to me. She reached out with shaking arms. Please, please give him to me. Eli transferred the baby carefully, his rough hands gentle against Sammy's small body. The moment Clara held her son again, she pressed him against her chest and sobbed. He's all right. Eli's voice was gruff. Hear that cry? He's mad as hell. That's good. That's real good. Clara couldn't speak. She just held Sammy and cried and listened to him cry and thought it was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. Eli turned away and busied himself with something at the small stove. Giving her privacy, Clara realized, giving her space to fall apart. She took it. When she finally got herself under control, Eli was holding out a tin cup. Coffee. Got some whiskey in it. Drink. Clara took the cup with trembling hands. The liquid burned, going down, spreading warmth through her frozen chest. I need to check your hands and feet, Eli said. Frostbite can turn ugly fast if you don't catch it. I'm fine. You ain't fine? You're half dead and too stubborn to admit it. He knelt in front of her and reached for her boot. May I? Clara nodded. He removed her boots gently despite his blunt words and examined her feet with careful fingers. Then he did the same with her hands, turning them over in the firelight. You're lucky. Ain't too bad. Gonna hurt like hellfire when the feeling comes back, but you'll keep all your fingers. And Sammy. Babies are tougher than they look. He was against my skin within minutes of me finding you. His color came back fast. Eli met her eyes. He's gonna be fine, Mrs. McAllister. Clara. Clara, then. He stood. You hungry? I don't know. I can't feel anything. That's the cold. Food will help. He moved to the pantry. Ain't got much. Biscuits, dried beef, coffee. I'll take anything. He brought her a plate of hard biscuits and strips of jerky. Clara ate with one hand, the other holding Sammy, who had fallen asleep against her chest. As she ate, she studied Eli in the firelight. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, a strong jaw covered with a short beard, and there a scar pale and old running from his left temple down toward his ear. He caught her looking. Bull got me, he said, 5 years back. Does it hurt? Not anymore. He didn't elaborate. Clara didn't push. Instead, she asked, Why were you out in the storm? Cattle broke through a fence line. Had to round 'em up before they froze. He sat down across from her, his long legs stretched toward the fire. Lucky I was out there. Lucky. Clara's voice was flat. I'm not sure I believe in luck anymore. Then call it Providence. Call it whatever you want. He shrugged. Point is, you're alive. Because of you. Because you were too stubborn to die. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Saw it in your eyes when I rode up. You were half frozen and completely terrified, but you were still fighting, still trying to save your boy. Clara looked down at Sammy's sleeping face. He's all I have left. I know. Something in his voice made her look up. You lost someone, she said. It wasn't a question. Eli's expression shuddered. He stood and walked to the window, his back to her. Storm's letting up. We can head to town come morning. Clara recognized the deflection. She'd used it enough herself since Daniel died. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have. Ain't nothing to be sorry for. He didn't turn around. We all got our ghosts out here. Ain't no point in talking 'em to death. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire and Sammy's soft breathing. Finally, Eli turned back. There's a bed in the corner. You and the boy take it. I'll keep the fire going. I can't take your bed. You can and you will. His voice brooked no argument. You need real sleep. So does your boy. Clara was too exhausted to fight. She carried Sammy to the narrow bed and lay down beside him, pulling a rough wool blanket over them both. The mattress was hard. The blanket smelled of smoke and pine. It was the most comfortable she'd felt in weeks. Through half-closed eyes, she watched Eli settle into the chair by the fire. He sat motionless, staring into the flames. One hand rose absently to touch the scar on his face. Clara fell asleep, wondering whose ghost he was thinking about. A sound woke her. Clara's eyes snapped open. The fire had burned low. Gray light filtered through the cabin's single window. Dawn, and outside voices. Brennan, you in there? Eli was already on his feet, rifle in hand. Clara hadn't even seen him move. Stay here, he said quietly. Don't make a sound. He moved to the door and opened it a crack. Who's asking? It's Hank Morgan, you damn fool. Sheriff Morgan. Got word the Silver Creek stage went down on Pine Ridge. You seen any survivors? Eli's shoulders relaxed. He set down the rifle and opened the door wider. Found two of 'em, woman and her baby. They're inside. A man appeared in the doorway, middle-aged, thick mustache, tin star on his chest. His eyes swept the cabin and landed on Clara, who was sitting up now. Sammy cradled in her arms. Ma'am. He tipped his hat. You all right? I am now, thanks to Mr. Brennan. Sheriff Morgan nodded slowly, something unreadable in his expression as he looked at Eli. Other passengers. Just me and Sammy, Clara said. The driver, he went for help when the wheel broke. I waited, but the storm got too bad. I tried to walk to town. You walked from Pine Ridge? Morgan's eyebrows shot up. In that storm, with a baby. I didn't have a choice. Morgan and Eli exchanged a look. Driver made it, Morgan said finally. Staggered into the Marshall Ranch about midnight, half frozen. He told us about the woman and baby he'd left behind. His jaw tightened. We rode out at first light soon as the storm broke. Figured we'd be finding bodies. Well, Eli's voice was dry. You figured wrong? Seems so. Morgan looked at Clara again. You're Margaret Whitfield's niece, ain't you, the one who inherited her place? Word travels fast. Small town, not much happens we don't know about. Morgan scratched his jaw. Your aunt was well-liked, Mrs. McAllister. Folks'll be glad to meet her kin. Not everyone, Eli said quietly. Morgan's expression darkened. Garrett's already been asking questions. Came by my office yesterday wanting to know when the new owner was arriving. Garrett. Clara frowned. Who's Garrett? Franklin Garrett, Eli said. Owns the Silver Creek Mining Company. He's been trying to buy your aunt's land for years. Why? Water. Eli met her eyes. The creek that runs through your property feeds half the ranches in this valley. Whoever controls that water controls everything." Clara's stomach tightened. "And this Garrett wants to control it." "Garrett wants to control everything." Morgan spat into the snow. "Watch yourself around him, Mrs. McAllister. He ain't a man who takes no for an answer." Clara thought of Daniel, of the railroad company that had worked him to death and then refused to pay his widow, of the landlord who had evicted her 2 weeks after the funeral, of every man who had ever looked at her and seen something to be used. "Then he's going to be disappointed," she said, "because I didn't come 1,000 miles to hand over my inheritance to some mining company." Morgan's mustache twitched. "Sounds like Margaret's kin, all right." Eli said nothing, but when Clara looked at him, she saw something in his eyes that might have been respect. Key. The ride to Silver Creek took 2 hours. Eli drove a borrowed wagon the sheriffs brought in case they'd needed to haul bodies while Clara sat beside him with Sammy, wrapped warmly in her arms. The landscape was blinding white, the sun reflecting off fresh snow that covered everything. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks lost in clouds. "It's beautiful," Clara said quietly. "It's deadly." Eli's eyes stayed on the trail. "Don't let the pretty fool you. This land kills people. Every winter we lose folks who got careless or unlucky or both." "You trying to scare me off?" "I'm trying to keep you alive." He glanced at her. "There's a difference." Clara held his gaze. "I'm not going anywhere, Mr. Brennan." "Eli." "I'm not going anywhere, Eli. This land is all I have, all Sammy has. Whatever it takes to survive here, I'll learn it." "Even if it kills you?" "It won't." Clara lifted her chin. "I'm too stubborn to die. You said so yourself." Something flickered across Eli's face, almost a smile. "Yes, ma'am, I did." Silver Creek was bigger than Clara expected. A main street lined with wooden buildings, a general store, a blacksmith, a church with a white steeple. The Hollister Hotel, 2 stories of weathered timber with a wide front porch. People stopped to stare as the wagon rolled down the main street. Clara felt their eyes on her, curious, suspicious, some openly hostile. A woman alone with a baby riding into town with Elijah Brennan. She could imagine what they were thinking. Eli pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the hotel. Before Clara could move, the front door swung open and a woman marched out, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. "Eli Brennan." Her voice was a whip crack. "Sheriff said you found the stage survivor. This her?" "This is her. Clara McAllister, Miss Margaret's niece." The woman's expression changed, softened. Margaret's niece. She came down the steps, arms already reaching out. "Oh, honey. Look at you, half frozen and dead on your feet. Come inside, right now, both of you." "Ma'am, Don't you ma'am me, child. I'm Agnes Hollister. I was your aunt's closest friend. Now get inside before you catch your death." Clara allowed herself to be swept up the steps and into the hotel. The lobby was warm, blessedly wonderfully warm, with a fire blazing in a huge stone fireplace. "Sit." Agnes pointed to a chair by the fire. "I'll get coffee and food. You look like you ain't eaten in a week." "Mrs. Hollister." "Aggie. Everyone calls me Aggie." She was already heading for the kitchen. "Eli, don't just stand there. Get that baby some warm milk." Eli raised an eyebrow at Clara. "She always liked this." "Heard that?" Aggie's voice echoed from the back. "And yes, I am. Deal with it." Clara found herself smiling, the first genuine smile in weeks. Then the hotel door opened, and the smile died. A man walked in. Tall, well-dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than everything Clara owned combined. His hair was slicked back, his shoes were polished, and his smile showed too many teeth. "Well, well." His voice was silk over steel. "Mrs. McAllister, I've been waiting for you." Eli stepped forward, putting himself between Clara and the newcomer. Garrett. Brennan. The man's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. Still playing hero, I see. Still playing vulture. The two men stared at each other. Clara could feel the tension crackling between them like heat lightning. Gentlemen. Aggie's voice cut through from the kitchen doorway. This is a respectable establishment. Take your pissing contest outside. Garrett's smile thinned. He stepped around Eli and approached Clara, who stood her ground despite every instinct screaming at her to retreat. Mrs. McAllister. He took her hand before she could stop him. Franklin Garrett. I own the Silver Creek Mining Company. Your aunt and I had dealings. Let go of my hand, Mr. Garrett. His grip tightened. I tried to buy her land, many times. She refused. Very stubborn woman, your aunt. Sounds like we have that in common. Indeed. He released her hand. But perhaps you're also more practical than she was. A woman alone with an infant trying to work a homestead in Montana winter. That's a hard road, Mrs. McAllister. A dangerous road. Accidents happen. Clara's blood ran cold. Is that a threat? A warning. Friendly advice. Garrett smiled again. I can make you a very generous offer for that land. Enough to start over somewhere easier. Somewhere safer. California, perhaps. I hear San Francisco is lovely this time of year. My aunt chose to die on that land, rather than sell to you. Clara stepped closer to Garrett, close enough to see the surprise flicker in his eyes. What makes you think I'll be any different? Because your aunt didn't have a baby to protect. The words landed like a slap. Clara felt her arms tighten around Sammy. Get out! Her voice was low, shaking with fury. Get out of this hotel. Mrs. McAllister. She said get out. Eli's hand closed on Garrett's shoulder. Don't make me say it again. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Garrett shrugged off Eli's hand and stepped back. Think about my offer, Mrs. McAllister. I'll be in touch. He tipped his hat and walked out, leaving a chill in the air that had nothing to do with the weather. Aggie appeared at Clara's side, pressing a cup of hot coffee into her hands. Breathe, honey. He's gone. Clara realized she was shaking. He threatened my son. That's what he does. Aggie's voice was grim. He finds the soft spot and presses on it. Your aunt knew. She stood up to him for 15 years. And now she's dead. Silence. Clara looked at Aggie. At Eli. How did my aunt die? Aggie hesitated. The doc said it was her heart. Gave out in her sleep. And you believe that? Another hesitation, longer this time. Margaret was healthy as a horse, Eli said quietly. I saw her the day before she died. She was planning to ride out to check her fences. Then the next morning, he shook his head. I don't believe in coincidences. Clara felt something cold settle in her chest. Garrett? We got no proof, Aggie said quickly. Nothing anyone could take to the sheriff. Margaret was 73 years old. Old people die. That's what everyone says. But you don't believe it. I believe Franklin Garrett would do anything to get his hands on that land. Aggie's jaw set. Including murder. Sammy stirred in Clara's arms, making a small sound of complaint. She looked down at her son's face. Daniel's eyes, her mother's chin. The only thing left in the world that mattered. Then I need to be smarter than my aunt was. Clara's voice was steady now. I need to find proof. Mrs. McAllister, Eli started. Clara. He stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. You don't know what you're getting into. Garrett owns half this town, the bank, the general store. Half the ranchers owe him money, going up against him. I didn't ask for this fight. Clara met his eyes. But it's here, and I'm not going to run from it. Even if it gets you killed. My husband worked himself to death for a railroad company that threw me out like garbage when he was gone. I've been hungry. I've been cold. I've been alone. She lifted her chin. I'm not afraid of Franklin Garrett. I'm not afraid of anyone anymore. Eli stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. All right then. You want to fight Garrett? He held out his hand. You're going to need help. Clara looked at his outstretched hand. Rough, calloused. The hand that had saved her life. She took it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. His grip was warm and strong. This is gonna get ugly before it gets better. I know. Aggie clapped her hands together. Well, if we're going to war, we're going to do it on full stomachs. Sit down, both of you. I'll fix breakfast. She bustled off toward the kitchen. Eli released Clara's hand, but he didn't step away. That land of yours, he said. It borders mine to the south. I can take you out there tomorrow if you want. Show you what you're working with. I'd like that. Cabin's gonna need work. Roof, windows, chimney. I've got men who can help. I can pay. We'll talk about that later. He almost smiled. Right now you need to eat and sleep, in that order. Clara nodded. But as Eli turned away to help Aggie in the kitchen, Clara walked to the window and looked out at the snow-covered street. Somewhere out there, Franklin Garrett was already planning his next move. And somewhere in this town, the truth about her aunt's death was waiting to be found. Clara touched the cold glass with her fingertips. I'm here, Aunt Margaret, she whispered. And I'm not going anywhere. The next morning came too fast. Clara woke to Sammy's hungry cries and the smell of bacon drifting up from downstairs. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache. But she was alive. Sammy was alive. That was enough. She fed him, changed him, and dressed in the cleanest clothes she had left. A simple gray dress that had seen better days. When she came downstairs, Aggie was already setting a plate at a table near the fire. Sit, eat, you look like death warmed over. Good morning to you too. Aggie snorted. I don't do good mornings, I do honest ones. She poured coffee into a thick ceramic mug. Eli sent word. He'll be here in an hour to take you out to Margaret's place. Clara's stomach tightened. Already? No point waiting. That cabin's been sitting empty for a year. Sooner you see what you're dealing with, sooner you can make a plan. Clara sat down and forced herself to eat, though her appetite had vanished. Every bite felt like swallowing stones. Aggie. She set down her fork. What was my aunt like? The older woman paused, coffee pot in hand. Margaret was fierce. A small smile crossed her face. Came out here alone in '62 when most women wouldn't dream of leaving the East. Bought that land with money she'd saved from teaching school. Built the cabin herself. Well, mostly herself. Had some help from the Brennan men. Eli's family. His father, Patrick Brennan. He and Margaret were friends. Aggie's smile faded. Patrick's been gone 10 years now. Eli's mother even longer. So Eli's alone too. That boy's been alone since he was 16 years old. Aggie shook her head. Raised his baby sister, worked cattle drives, built that ranch from nothing, and then what? Aggie hesitated. That ain't my story to tell. Before Clara could push further, the hotel door opened. Eli stepped in, hat in hand, snow dusting his shoulders. Morning. Morning yourself. Aggie waved him toward the table. Sit down. Eat something before you drag this poor woman out into the cold. I already ate. Then eat again. You're too skinny. Eli's lips twitched. Yes, ma'am. He sat across from Clara, accepting the plate Aggie thrust at him. For a few minutes, they ate in silence. Clara studied him over the rim of her coffee cup, the way he held his fork, the careful way he chewed, the occasional glance he threw toward the window. Watching. Always watching. You expecting trouble? She asked. Eli looked at her. Always. Is that why you carry a rifle everywhere? That's why I'm still alive. He pushed back his plate. You ready? Clara took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. She bundled Sammy into every blanket she could find, wrapped herself in the coat Aggie had lent her, and followed Eli out into the cold. The wagon was waiting a sturdy brown horse, stamping impatiently in the snow. "Her name's Molly," Eli said, helping Clara up onto the seat. "She don't like standing still." "Neither do I." Eli glanced at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he climbed up beside her, took the reins, and urged Molly forward. The town fell away behind them. For a while, neither of them spoke. Clara watched the landscape roll past white fields, dark pines, mountains rising in the distance. Beautiful and deadly, just like Eli had said. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Depends on what it is." "Last night, when Garrett came in." Clara chose her words carefully. "The way you looked at him. That wasn't just dislike. That was hate." Eli's jaw tightened. "Garrett and I have history." "What kind of history?" Silence stretched between them. Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Then, 5 years ago I was engaged. Her name was Sarah." Clara's breath caught. "Sarah's father owned a ranch south of town. Good land, good water. Garrett wanted it." Eli's voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a newspaper. "He made offers. Sarah's father refused. Then the accidents started." Accidents. Cattle dying, fences cut, a barn burned down. Eli's hands tightened on the reins. "One night I was out checking on the herd. A bull got loose, spooked, came right at me." His hand rose briefly to touch the scar on his face. "Sarah was there. She tried to help, tried to distract the bull so I could get clear." His voice broke slightly. "It worked. Bull turned on her instead." Clara felt sick. "Oh, Eli." "She died 3 days later. Never woke up." The words hung in the cold air between them. "And Garrett bought the ranch from Sarah's father a month later. Half the price he'd originally offered." Eli's voice was ice. "Old man was too broken to fight anymore. Lost his daughter, lost his land, lost everything." "You think Garrett—" "I think that bull didn't get loose by accident." Eli finally looked at her, and Clara saw something in his eyes that made her shiver. "I think Garrett killed the woman I loved. And I think he killed your aunt too." Clara swallowed hard. "Can you prove it?" "No." The word was bitter. "That's the hell of it. Garrett's smart. He never does anything himself. Never leaves evidence. Just accidents. Always accidents." "Then how do we stop him?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've been trying for 5 years. Haven't figured it out yet." "Maybe you just needed help." He looked at her again. This time something shifted in his expression. "Maybe I did." They rode on in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. Heavier, more intimate. The silence of two people who had shared something painful and true. 20 minutes later, Eli pulled the wagon to a stop. "We're here." Clara looked up, and her heart sank. The cabin was small. Smaller than she'd imagined. 1 room, maybe 2, with a sagging porch and a chimney that leaned slightly to the left. The windows were dark, some of them cracked. Snow had drifted against the front door undisturbed. It looked abandoned, forgotten. It looked like defeat. "I know it ain't much," Eli said quietly. Clara climbed down from the wagon Sammy clutched against her chest. She walked toward the cabin, her boots crunching through the frozen crust of snow. The porch steps creaked under her weight. The door stuck when she pushed it, swollen with moisture, but she forced it open. Inside was dark and cold. Dust covered everything. A table with 2 chairs. A fireplace full of old ashes. A narrow bed in the corner, blankets still rumpled like someone had just gotten up. Like Margaret had just gotten up. A year ago. And never come back. Clara stood in the middle of the room, turning slowly. I can't do this." The words came out before she could stop them. Eli appeared in the doorway. "Clara, look at this place." Her voice cracked. "The roof is sagging. The windows are broken. There's no food, no firewood, nothing. How am I supposed to raise a baby here? How am I supposed to survive? You ain't supposed to do it alone." "But I am alone." Clara spun to face him, tears burning in her eyes. "My husband is dead. My parents are dead. My aunt is dead. Everyone I've ever loved is dead, and I'm standing in a frozen shack in the middle of nowhere with a 4-month-old baby and a man I met yesterday." Eli didn't flinch. "You done?" Clara stared at him, chest heaving. "Because when you're done feeling sorry for yourself, we got work to do." He stepped into the cabin, looking around with a critical eye. "Roof needs patching. I can get that done in a day. Windows need replacing. I know a man in town who owes me a favor. Chimney needs cleaning, but the structure's sound. Fireplace works fine once you clear the nest out." "Nest?" "Birds." He shrugged. "They like chimneys." Clara let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You're insane." "Probably." Eli met her eyes. "But I'm also right. This place can be fixed. And you don't have to do it alone. I told you last night you want to fight Garrett, you're going to need help. I meant it." "Why?" Clara demanded. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. "Because I couldn't save Sarah." His voice was rough. "Because I've spent 5 years watching Garrett take whatever he wants, and I'm tired of it. Because you walked through a blizzard with a baby in your arms and refused to die." He stepped closer. "Because you're the first person I've met in a long time who might actually be stubborn enough to beat him." Clara held his gaze. "I can't pay you. Not yet. I don't know what money Margaret left, or if she left any at all. I ain't asking for money." "Then what do you want?" "I want Garrett to lose." Eli's jaw tightened. "I want him to know what it feels like to want something and not get it. To watch everything he planned fall apart." His eyes burned. "I want justice. For Sarah. For Margaret. For everyone he's ever hurt." Clara understood then. This wasn't charity. This was war. And Eli was offering to be her ally. "All right," she said slowly. "Partners then." "Partners." Neither of them moved to shake hands. It didn't seem necessary. Clara turned back to the cabin, seeing it differently now. Not a ruin. A project. A beginning. "Where do we start?" Eli almost smiled. "First, we need to know what we're working with. Margaret kept records, land surveys, water rights, everything. Should be here somewhere." They searched together, Clara taking the main room, while Eli checked a small storage area in the back. Sammy watched from a makeshift bed Clara had made on the table, his eyes tracking their movements. "Found something." Eli emerged holding a wooden box, dust-covered but intact. He set it on the table and opened it. Inside were papers. Dozens of them. Deeds, surveys, letters, receipts. And at the bottom, a leather journal. Clara lifted it carefully. The cover was worn smooth with use. Inside, Margaret's handwriting filled page after page, neat, precise, the penmanship of a former schoolteacher. Her diary. Clara breathed. She opened to a random page and began to read aloud. October 3rd, 1878. Garrett came again today. 3rd time this month. Offered me double what the land is worth. I told him I'd rather burn it to the ground than sell it to him. He smiled that snake smile of his and said I might regret that. I told him I don't regret anything. Eli made a sound low in his throat. Clara flipped forward. January 15th, 1879. Someone poisoned my well. Had to haul water from the creek for 2 weeks before it cleared. Sheriff says there's no proof it was deliberate. Sheriff is a fool. Another page. March 22nd, 1879. Found my milk cow dead this morning. Throat cut. Clean cut like from a knife. Sheriff says it was wolves. Clara looked up at Eli. His face was stone. She documented everything. Keep reading. Clara turned to the final entries. November 30th, 1879. Garrett's getting desperate. I can see it in his eyes. The railroad's coming through next spring, and whoever controls the water rights will control the whole valley. He needs my land. He needs it bad. She paused. I've written to my sister's girl in Kentucky. Clara, her name is. Never met her, but Josephine always said she had spirit. If something happens to me, I want her to have this place. I want her to know the truth. Clara's hands were shaking now. December 14th, 1879. Eli Brennan came by today to check on me. Good man, that one. Reminds me of his father. I told him if anything happens to me, he should watch over my niece when she comes. He promised he would. I believe him. She turned to the last entry. December 17th, 1879. Someone was in my cabin last night. I heard them moving around, but when I lit the lamp, no one was there. Nothing taken. Nothing disturbed. But I know what I heard. I think Garrett's finally decided I'm not going to sell. I think he's going to try something else. The next page was blank. Clara closed the journal. December 18th. Eli said quietly. That's when they found her. The day after she wrote this. They stared at each other across the dusty table. This is proof, Clara said. This journal, it shows a pattern. Harassment, intimidation, escalation. It shows what Margaret believed. That ain't the same as proof. Eli shook his head. Garrett's lawyer would tear it apart. Ramblings of a paranoid old woman, he'd call it. Then we find more. Clara's voice was fierce. We find the evidence she couldn't find. We prove what he did. And if we can't, then we make sure he doesn't get this land. Clara looked around the cabin. I don't care if I have to live in a tent and eat snow. I'm not selling. Not to him. Not ever. Eli studied her for a long moment. You know what you're signing up for. Garrett won't stop. Once he knows you're not going to roll over, he'll come at you hard. The accidents Margaret wrote about, they'll happen to you too. Let them. You've got a baby to think about. That's exactly why I'm doing this. Clara lifted Sammy from the table, holding him close. What kind of mother would I be if I taught him to run from every bully? What kind of life would I be giving him if I let fear make all my decisions? She met Eli's eyes. I'd rather die fighting than live on my knees. Wouldn't you? Something changed in Eli's face. Something softened. Yeah, he said quietly. I would. The moment stretched between them, fragile and strange and full of possibility. Then Sammy let out a loud cry, shattering the silence. Clara laughed despite herself. I think someone's hungry. I'll start cleaning the chimney, give you some privacy. Eli grabbed a broom and headed for the fireplace, and Clara settled into one of the dusty chairs to feed Sammy. As she nursed her son, she looked around the cabin with new eyes. This was her inheritance. Not just land and water rights and a falling-down cabin. Her aunt's fight, her aunt's courage, her aunt's unfinished war. And now it was hers to finish. 2 hours later, the cabin was transformed. Eli had cleared the chimney and gotten a fire going. Clara had swept out the worst of the dust and opened the windows to air out the mustiness. The afternoon sun slanted through the glass, illuminating dancing motes of dust. It still wasn't much, but it was starting to feel like something. Someone's coming. Eli's voice was sharp. He moved to the window hand, dropping to the pistol at his hip. Clara tensed, clutching Sammy tighter. Who is it? Can't tell yet. Single rider. Eli's eyes narrowed. Moving fast. They waited. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer, and then a horse burst into the clearing, a big black mare ridden hard. The rider was a woman. She pulled the horse to a stop, swung down from the saddle, and strode toward the cabin like she owned it. Young, maybe Clara's age, or a few years older. Dark hair pinned up under a man's hat. riding clothes instead of a dress. Sharp green eyes that swept over Clara, Eli, and the cabin in one quick assessment. "So," she said, "you're the niece." Clara straightened her spine. "And you are Lucy Garrett." The name hit Clara like a slap. Garrett, Franklin's daughter. Lucy's smile was thin and humorless. "Don't worry, I hate him too." Eli stepped forward. "What are you doing here, Lucy?" "Saving your lives, probably." Lucy pushed past him into the cabin, ignoring his protest. "My father knows you're here. He's already planning his next move." "What move?" Lucy turned to face Clara. "He's going to challenge your inheritance. Says Margaret wasn't of sound mind when she wrote her will. He's got a lawyer coming in from Helena next week to start proceedings." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "He can do that." "He can try. Whether he wins depends on what you do in the next 7 days." "What do you mean?" "I mean you need to establish yourself. Fast." Lucy ticked points off on her fingers. "Get your name on the deed at the land office. Get statements from people who knew Margaret confirming she was sane. Get the sheriff on record that you're the legal owner of this property." "Why are you helping me?" Clara demanded. "Your father—" "My father is a monster." Lucy's voice was flat. "He killed my mother. Did you know that everyone says she fell down the stairs, but I was there. I saw what he did." The cabin went silent. "I've been waiting 10 years for someone to stand up to him," Lucy continued. "Someone stubborn enough, angry enough, brave enough to actually fight back. Margaret was that person, but she was old, alone, easy to get rid of." She looked at Clara. "You're not alone, and you're not old. And from what I hear, you walked through a blizzard with a baby and told death to go to hell." Clara didn't know what to say. "I can help you," Lucy said. "I know my father's secrets. I know where the bodies are buried, some of them literally. But I need to know you're not going to fold the first time things get hard." "I won't." "Prove it." "How?" Lucy smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Come to dinner tomorrow night. At my father's house. He's invited you. Oh yes, the invitation's already at the hotel. He thinks if he wines and dines, you shows you how powerful he is, you'll get scared and sell. And you want me to walk into his den. I want you to walk in and show him you're not afraid." Lucy's eyes gleamed. "I want you to smile at him across the table and let him see that you know exactly what he is. And then I want you to watch his face when he realizes you're not going to break." Clara's heart was pounding. What if he tries something? He won't, not in his own house in front of witnesses. Franklin Garrett cares about appearances above everything else. He won't risk making a scene. Lucy paused. "Besides, I'll be there, and so will half the town's respectable citizens. You'll be perfectly safe." "And what do you get out of this?" "I get to watch my father squirm." Lucy's voice was savage. "I've been waiting for that for 10 years. Clara looked at Eli. He was frowning, arms crossed over his chest. "I don't like it." "I'm not asking you to like it." Lucy turned to him. "I'm asking if you've got a better plan." Silence. "That's what I thought." Clara made a decision. "I'll come to dinner." Lucy nodded, satisfaction flickering across her face. "Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Wear something nice." She headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Mrs. McAllister." "Yes. Don't bring the baby. My father has a temper, and I can't guarantee he won't say something that makes you want to kill him. Best if your son isn't there to see that." She was gone before Clara could respond, riding hard back toward town. Eli watched her go, his expression troubled. "You sure about this?" "No." Clara hugged Sammy closer. "But what choice do I have? You could leave, take the money and run, start over somewhere else." "Is that what you'd do?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. "No," he admitted finally. "I'd fight." "Then why are you trying to talk me out of it?" Because I've already lost one woman to Franklin Garrett. Eli's voice was raw. I don't want to lose another. Clara's breath caught. Eli? Forget I said that. He turned away, grabbing his coat from the chair. We should head back. Sun's going down. Eli, wait. He stopped but didn't turn around. Clara walked to him, Sammy still cradled in one arm. She reached out and touched his shoulder, just a light touch, barely there. I'm not Sarah, she said softly, and I'm not going to die. Eli finally turned. His eyes were haunted. You can't promise that. No, I can't. Clara held his gaze. But I can promise I won't give up. I won't run. And I won't let Garrett win without one hell of a fight. Something in Eli's expression shifted. All right then. His voice was rough. Let's get you back to town. We've got a dinner to prepare for. They locked up the cabin and climbed into the wagon. As Eli urged Molly forward, Clara looked back at the small building, her aunt's legacy, her son's future, her battlefield. Tomorrow, she would walk into the lion's den, and she would show Franklin Garrett exactly what kind of woman he was dealing with. The ride back to Silver Creek was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Charged, electric, full of unspoken things. As they entered town, Clara saw people watching them from doorways and windows. Word had spread. The whole town knew about Margaret's niece now, and they were all waiting to see what she would do. Eli pulled up in front of the Hollister Hotel. Before Clara could climb down, he caught her arm. Clara. Yes? Whatever happens tomorrow night. He paused, struggling with words. I'll be outside, waiting. If anything goes wrong, anything at all, you get to a window and signal me. What kind of signal? I don't know. Wave, scream, throw something. His grip tightened. Just let me know, and I'll come. Clara felt warmth spread through her chest, despite the cold. Partners, she said softly. Partners. She climbed down from the wagon, Sammy secure in her arms. Eli watched until she was safely inside, then drove away. Aggie met her at the door. Well, how bad is it? Bad, but fixable. Clara squared her shoulders. And Aggie, I need a dress. The best one you can find. I'm having dinner at Franklin Garrett's house tomorrow night. Aggie's eyes went wide. Then slowly she smiled. Oh, honey, this is going to be good. Aggie worked miracles with needle and thread. The dress had belonged to her daughter, deep blue silk, with ivory lace at the collar and cuffs. Too fine for Montana, Aggie had said, but perfect for going to war. Clara stood in front of the small mirror in her room, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. She'd pinned her hair up, leaving a few curls loose around her face. The dress fit like it had been made for her. You look beautiful, honey. Aggie stood in the doorway, Sammy gurgling happily in her arms. Franklin Garrett won't know what hit him. I feel like I'm walking into a trap. You are. Aggie's voice was matter of fact. But sometimes the only way out of a trap is straight through it. A knock at the door made them both turn. That'll be your escort. Aggie smiled knowingly. He's been pacing downstairs for the past hour. Clara descended the stairs to find Eli waiting in the lobby. He'd cleaned up. Really cleaned up. Dark suit, white shirt, hair combed back from his face. He looked uncomfortable in the formal clothes, like a wolf forced into sheep's clothing. But when his eyes found Clara on the stairs, he went still. Clara. Her name came out rough. Is it too much? She touched the lace at her collar nervously. Aggie said, No. Eli cleared his throat. You look real nice. Real nice. Aggie snorted from behind Clara. Smooth talker, this one. Eli's ears went red. We should go. Don't want to be late. The ride to Garrett's house was short. Too short for Clara's liking. With every turn of the wagon wheels, her heart beat faster. By the time they pulled up to the large Victorian mansion at the edge of town, her palms were slick with sweat. Remember what I said. Eli's voice was low as he helped her down. Anything goes wrong, you signal me. I will. I mean it, Clara. Anything. She met his eyes and saw the fear there. Real fear. For her. I'll be careful, she promised. Eli nodded once, then stepped back into the shadows. Clara squared her shoulders and walked up the steps to Franklin Garrett's front door. A servant opened it before she could knock. Mrs. McAllister, Mr. Garrett is expecting you. She was led through a marble-floored hallway into a grand dining room. Crystal chandeliers, mahogany furniture, silver candlesticks gleaming on the table. Everything designed to intimidate. Clara refused to be intimidated. Franklin Garrett rose from the head of the table as she entered. Mrs. McAllister. His smile was all teeth. How lovely of you to join us. Mr. Garrett? Clara kept her voice cool. Thank you for the invitation. Please sit. He gestured to the chair at his right. I believe you've already met my daughter Lucy. Lucy sat across the table dressed in dark green velvet, her expression carefully neutral. She gave Clara the slightest nod. The other guests were familiar faces from town. The banker, the general store owner, a man Clara recognized as the owner of the lumber mill. All men. All watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Clara took her seat and folded her hands in her lap. I must say, Mrs. McAllister, you're quite the talk of the town. Garrett settled back in his chair, swirling wine in his glass. Walking through a blizzard with an infant. Very dramatic. Necessity, not drama. Our stagecoach broke down. Yes, I heard. Fortunate that Eli Brennan happened to find you. Something flickered in Garrett's eyes. He has a habit of appearing where he's not expected. I'd say his habit saved my life. Indeed. Garrett's smile didn't waver. Tell me, how do you find your inheritance? That cabin of yours must be quite a change from Kentucky. It needs work, but it has potential. Potential? Garrett laughed softly. Such optimism. I admire that in a woman. He leaned forward. But surely you've realized by now that running a homestead alone with a baby, no less, is nearly impossible. Especially in Montana winter. I'm not alone. Ah, yes. Brennan. Garrett's voice hardened, almost imperceptibly. Is that the arrangement, then? He fixes up your cabin in exchange for... what exactly? Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. Mr. Brennan is helping me out of respect for my aunt. They were neighbors. Neighbors. Garrett's tone made the word sound obscene. Is that what they're calling it now? Father. Lucy's voice cut through the tension. You're being rude. I'm being practical. Garrett's eyes never left Clara's face. Mrs. McAllister, I'll be direct. I've made offers on your aunt's property before. Generous offers. She refused them all, and look where that got her. Dead, you mean? The table went silent. Garrett's smile froze. I was going to say stubborn and alone, but if you want to be morbid about it... My aunt died the day after someone broke into her cabin. Clara kept her voice level. She wrote about it in her journal. Strange coincidence, don't you think? The banker shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The lumber mill owner suddenly found his wine very interesting. Are you accusing me of something, Mrs. McAllister? I'm stating facts, Mr. Garrett. My aunt documented years of harassment, poisoned wells, dead livestock, cut fences. All of it started after she refused to sell to you. Frontier life is hard. Garrett's voice was cold now, all pretense of friendliness gone. Things happen. Yes, they do. Clara met his gaze without flinching. And I'm sure things will continue to happen. To me, to my property, to anyone who stands in your way. You're very bold for a woman in your position. I'm very tired of being underestimated. They stared at each other across the table. The silence stretched tight as a wire. Then Lucy laughed. Well, this is the most entertaining dinner we've had in months. She raised her wine glass. To Mrs. McAllister. May she prove to be everything her aunt was, and more. The toast broke the tension, though barely. The other guests raised their glasses with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Garrett's smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "To Mrs. McAllister," he echoed. "May she make wise decisions." Dinner proceeded in uncomfortable silence. Clara forced herself to eat, though every bite tasted like sawdust. She could feel Garrett's eyes on her, calculating, assessing, waiting. After dessert, Garrett rose from his chair. "Gentlemen, if you'll excuse us, I'd like a private word with Mrs. McAllister." He gestured toward a door at the far end of the room. "My study. We won't be long." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm not sure that's appropriate," the banker began. "It's quite all right." Clara stood smoothing her skirts. "I'd be happy to hear what Mr. Garrett has to say." She followed him through the door, acutely aware of Lucy's eyes on her back. The study was smaller than the dining room, but no less opulent. Books lined the walls, and a massive oak desk dominated the center of the space. Garrett closed the door behind them and moved to stand behind the desk. He didn't offer her a seat. "Let me be plain, Mrs. McAllister." All pretense of charm was gone now. "I want your land. I've wanted it for 15 years. Your aunt was a stubborn old fool who could have died wealthy and comfortable, but instead she died cold and alone in a cabin that wasn't worth the wood it was built from. She died with her integrity intact. Integrity doesn't keep you warm in winter." Garrett opened a drawer and pulled out a document. "I'm prepared to offer you $5,000 for that property. Cash. Tonight." Clara's breath caught. $5,000. More money than she'd ever seen in her life. Enough to start over anywhere. Enough to give Sammy everything he'd ever need. "That's very generous." "It is." Garrett smiled, sensing weakness. "Take it, Mrs. McAllister. Take the money and go back east where you belong. Raise your son in civilization. Forget about Montana and frontier nonsense." Clara looked at the document on the desk. $5,000. Freedom. Safety. All she had to do was sign. "And if I refuse?" Garrett's smile vanished. "Then I'll make sure you regret it. I have lawyers, Mrs. McAllister. Good ones. I'll tie up your inheritance in court for years. I'll challenge every document, every claim, every signature. By the time I'm done, you won't have a penny to your name and you still won't have that land." "That sounds like a threat." "It's a promise." Garrett leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. "I don't lose Mrs. McAllister, ever. I tried to be civilized with your aunt. I tried to be civilized with you. But if you want to do this the hard way, I'm happy to oblige." Clara's hands were shaking. She clasped them together so he wouldn't see. "My aunt kept records," she said. "Of everything. The harassment, the accidents, the timing of her death. Records can be destroyed. Not if copies exist." Garrett's eyes narrowed. "What copies?" "Do you think I'm stupid enough to tell you that?" Clara lifted her chin. "My aunt was smarter than you gave her credit for. So am I." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Clara forced a smile. "I guess you'll find out." The silence stretched between them, thick with threat. Then Garrett straightened. "Get out of my house." "Gladly." Clara turned and walked toward the door. Her hand was on the knob when Garrett's voice stopped her. "Mrs. McAllister?" She didn't turn around. "Your aunt thought she could beat me too. Remember how that ended?" Clara opened the door and walked out without looking back. Lucy was waiting in the hallway. "Come with me." Her voice was urgent. "Quickly." She grabbed Clara's arm and pulled her through a side door down a narrow servants' corridor and out into the cold night air. "What?" "He's going to send men after you." Lucy's face was pale in the moonlight. "Tonight. I heard him tell his foreman before dinner." Clara's blood went cold. "After me?" "To search your cabin. Find those copies you mentioned if they exist." Lucy's grip tightened. Do copies exist?" "I don't know. I only found the journal yesterday." "Then we need to find out." Lucy pulled her toward the stables. Brennan's waiting at the front. Tell him to take you to the cabin, now, before my father's men get there." "Why are you doing this?" Lucy stopped. In the darkness, her eyes were bright with tears. "Because he killed my mother," she whispered. "And I couldn't stop him. But maybe if I help you," her voice broke. "Maybe she didn't die for nothing." Clara squeezed her hand. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Just go. Go now." Clara ran. She found Eli exactly where he'd promised to be hidden in the shadows beside the front gate. "Clara!" He caught her as she stumbled toward him. "What happened? Are you hurt? We have to go to the cabin, now. Garrett's sending men to search it." Eli didn't ask questions. He lifted her onto the wagon, climbed up beside her, and whipped the horse into motion. The ride was a blur of darkness and cold wind and fear. "What are they looking for?" Eli shouted over the thunder of hooves. "Copies of Margaret's journal. I told Garrett they existed." "Do they?" "I don't know." Clara gripped the wagon seat as they careened around a corner. But Margaret was thorough. If she documented everything, maybe she made copies. Maybe she hid them somewhere. "We'll search together. Whatever's there, we'll find it." They reached the cabin 15 minutes later. No sign of other riders yet, but that wouldn't last long. Eli jumped down and ran for the door. Clara was right behind him. "Where do we look?" "Everywhere." Clara lit a lamp with shaking hands. "Loose floorboards, hidden compartments, behind the books. Anywhere Margaret might have hidden something." They tore the cabin apart. Eli checked the floorboards while Clara searched through Margaret's belongings. Drawers emptied onto the floor, books pulled from shelves and shaken. The mattress flipped. The stove moved, the chimney checked. Nothing. "Clara." Eli's voice was tense. "Riders coming. Maybe 3 or 4. Clara's heart dropped. "How long?" 5 minutes, maybe less. She looked around wildly. There had to be something. Margaret wouldn't have left her unprotected. She wouldn't have. Her eyes fell on the fireplace, not the chimney, the hearth itself, the stones. "Eli, help me." She dropped to her knees and began running her fingers along the edges of the hearthstones. Old, worn, but one of them, one near the corner, wobbled slightly when she pressed on it. "There," she pointed. "That one." Eli pulled out his knife and worked it under the stone's edge. It resisted, then came loose with a grinding sound. Beneath it was a hole, and in the hole was a metal box. "Got it." Eli grabbed the box and shoved the stone back into place. "We need to go, now. How they'll see us on the road. There's a trail behind the cabin, through the woods. It comes out near my ranch." He grabbed her hand. "Can you ride?" "I'll have to." They ran out the back door just as the sound of hoofbeats reached the front. Eli's horse was tied near the woodpile. Clara hadn't even noticed him bring it. Eli mounted first, then pulled Clara up behind him. She wrapped her arms around his waist and held on tight. "Don't let go," he said. "I won't." He kicked the horse into a gallop, and they plunged into the darkness of the trees. The trail was narrow and treacherous, barely visible in the moonlight. Branches whipped at Clara's face as they rode. She buried her head against Eli's back and prayed. Behind them she heard shouts. Garrett's men had reached the cabin. "They'll track us." "Not in the dark. Not through these woods." Eli's voice was grimly confident. "I know this land. They don't." They rode for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Finally the trees opened up and Clara saw lights ahead. A ranch house, a barn, fences stretching into the darkness. Broken Arrow Ranch. Eli didn't slow down until they reached the barn. He pulled the horse to a stop, dismounted, and lifted Clara down. "Inside, quickly." The ranch house was warm and smelled of wood smoke and leather. Eli bolted the door behind them and moved to the windows, peering out into the darkness. "I don't think they followed us." Clara sank into a chair, her legs finally giving way. "The box. Where's the box?" Eli set it on the table in front of her. It was small, maybe 8 inches square, with a rusty lock on the front. We need a key. I don't have a key. Eli grabbed a fire poker and jammed it under the lock. Metal groaned, then snapped. The lid opened. Inside were papers. Dozens of them. And at the very top, a letter in Margaret's handwriting. Clara picked it up with trembling hands. To my niece, Clara, she read aloud. If you're reading this, then I'm dead, and Franklin Garrett is probably responsible. Everything you need to prove it is in this box. Land surveys showing he illegally diverted water from my property. Statements from ranch hands he bribed or threatened. A letter from a Pinkerton detective I hired documenting his criminal activities going back 20 years. Clara looked up at Eli, eyes wide. There's more, she continued. At the bottom of the box, you'll find a document signed by Garrett himself, a contract with a man named Samuel Briggs paying him $500 to remove obstacles to Garrett's business interests. Briggs is the man who killed my friend Patrick Brennan, Eli's father. Eli went pale. What? Clara handed him the letter. He read it with shaking hands. Garrett killed my father. His voice was barely a whisper. All this time. All these years. I thought it was an accident. A stampede. But it was murder. Clara stood up. Eli, this changes everything. This isn't just about land anymore. This is about justice. Eli looked at her, and she saw something new in his eyes. Something fierce and bright and terrifying. Where's the sheriff? We can't go to the sheriff, not tonight. Garrett probably owns him too. Clara put her hand on Eli's arm. We need to be smart about this. We need to make copies, hide them in different places, make sure that even if Garrett destroys one, there are others. And then we take him down. Clara's voice hardened. Legally, publicly, so everyone knows exactly what kind of monster he is. Eli stared at her for a long moment, then he nodded. All right, we do this your way. He closed his hand over hers. But Clara, when we're done, when the law has had its chance, if Garrett walks free, I'm going to kill him. Eli. I mean it. His eyes were cold. He took my father. He took Sarah. He tried to take you. Some things can't be forgiven. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that vengeance wouldn't bring anyone back, that violence only created more violence. But she looked into his eyes and saw 20 years of grief and rage, and she couldn't say the words. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, she said softly. They spent the rest of the night going through the box, cataloging every document, every piece of evidence. By dawn, Clara's eyes were burning with exhaustion, but she had a complete picture of Franklin Garrett's crimes. Water theft, bribery, intimidation, arson, murder. 3 murders at least. Patrick Brennan, Sarah Winters, Margaret Whitfield, maybe more. We need to get this to someone who can't be bought, Clara said as the first light crept through the windows. A federal marshal, a newspaper in Helena, someone outside Garrett's reach. I know someone. Eli stood stretching muscles stiff from hours of sitting. A lawyer in Bozeman. Helped me with the ranch paperwork years ago. He's honest. And he hates Garrett almost as much as I do. Can you trust him? With my life. Clara nodded. Then go. Take the originals. I'll stay here with the copies. Eli hesitated. I don't want to leave you alone. I won't be alone. I'll go back to town, back to Aggie's. Clara managed a tired smile. Garrett won't try anything in broad daylight, not with the whole town watching. You don't know that. No, but I know I can't hide forever. She stood and faced him. We started this fight, Eli. Now we have to see it through. He looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had stumbled into his life 3 days ago, half frozen and desperate, clutching a baby in the snow. This woman who had given him something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Be careful, he said roughly. You too. He nodded once, gathered the documents, and headed for the door. Then he stopped. "Clara." "Yes." He crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed her. It was quick, fierce, over before Clara could fully register what was happening. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said against her lips. "Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, leaving Clara standing alone in the middle of his house, with her heart pounding and her lips tingling, and everything she thought she knew about her own heart turned completely upside down. Clara stood at the window of Eli's ranch house, watching the dust from his horse disappear down the road. Her lips still tingled from his kiss. She touched them with trembling fingers, trying to process what had just happened. 3 days. She had known Elijah Brennan for 3 days. Daniel had courted her for 8 months before she'd let him hold her hand. And yet when Eli had kissed her, it had felt like the most natural thing in the world. She shook her head. There was no time for this. Not now. Not with Garrett's men probably still searching for her. She gathered the copies of Margaret's documents, wrapped them in oilcloth, and hid them in the one place she knew Garrett would never think to look. Inside Sammy's cradle beneath the mattress padding. If anyone searched her, they'd find nothing, and no one would disturb a sleeping baby. The ride back to Silver Creek took 40 minutes. Clara borrowed one of Eli's gentler horses, a spotted mare named Penny, who seemed to know the way without much guidance. By the time she reached the Hollister Hotel, the sun was fully up and the town was coming alive. Aggie met her at the door, Sammy in her arms. "Thank God." The older woman pulled Clara inside. "I've been worried sick. What happened? Where's Eli?" Clara told her everything. The dinner, Garrett's threats, the chase to the cabin, the hidden box and its contents. By the end, Aggie's face was pale. "You found proof. Real proof. Enough to put Garrett away for life, maybe even hang him." Clara took Sammy from Aggie's arms, holding him close. "Eli's taking it to a lawyer in Bozeman, someone Garrett can't buy." "And Garrett, does he know what you found?" "He knows we found something, he doesn't know what." Aggie sat down heavily in a chair. "Lord have mercy, this is going to blow the whole town apart." "Maybe that's what needs to happen." Clara looked out the window at the waking street. "Maybe this town's been held together by fear for too long." "Honey, you don't understand. Garrett owns half the businesses here. If he goes down, a lot of folks go down with him. Then they should have made better choices." Aggie was quiet for a moment. "You've changed," she said finally. "Since you first walked in here 3 days ago. You were scared then, uncertain. Now you're angry. Determined." Aggie stood and put her hand on Clara's shoulder. "Your aunt would be proud." Before Clara could respond, the hotel door burst open. Sheriff Morgan stood in the doorway, breathing hard. "Mrs. McAllister, you need to come with me." Clara's blood went cold. "Why?" "There's been an incident at your property. The cabin." Morgan's face was grim. "It's gone. Burned to the ground." For a moment, Clara couldn't breathe. "What?" "Fire broke out sometime last night. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late." Morgan shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There's nothing left." Clara felt Aggie's hand tighten on her shoulder. "Garrett. We don't know that—" "Yes, we do." Clara's voice was ice. "He couldn't find what he was looking for, so he burned everything." She laughed, a harsh sound. "He thinks he destroyed the evidence." Morgan's eyes narrowed. "What evidence?" Clara met his gaze. "How much does Garrett pay you, Sheriff, to look the other way? To call murders accidents? To protect him from consequences?" Morgan's face went red. "Now just a minute. My aunt documented everything. Every threat. Every act of sabotage. Every suspicious death." Clara stepped toward him. "Including the murder of Patrick Brennan 5 years ago." The sheriff's face went white. "That's right," Clara continued. "There's a contract in Garrett's own handwriting paying a man named Samuel Briggs to remove obstacles. Patrick Brennan was one of those obstacles. You're lying. Am I? Then why did Garrett send men to search my cabin last night? Why did he burn it when they couldn't find what they were looking for? Morgan's hand moved toward his gun. Aggie stepped between them. Don't you dare, Hank Morgan. Don't you even think about it. Stay out of this, Agnes. Like hell I will. Aggie's voice was fierce. I've known you 30 years, Hank. I knew you when you were a good man, before Garrett got his hooks into you. Morgan's hand trembled. It ain't like you think, he said quietly. I didn't have a choice. He's got things on me, things that would destroy my family. So you let him destroy everyone else's families instead. Morgan closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Agnes. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me. Aggie pointed at Clara. Apologize to her son who's going to grow up without a home because you didn't have the spine to do your job. The sheriff looked at Clara. She saw shame in his eyes. Real shame. Mrs. McAllister, Save it. Clara's voice was cold. You want to make things right? Then do your job. Arrest Franklin Garrett. I can't. I don't have evidence. You will. Tomorrow, or the next day. Clara held his gaze. The question is, when it comes, whose side are you going to be on? Morgan stood frozen for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out without another word. Aggie let out a breath. That went well. He's scared. Garrett has something on him. Clara turned to the window, watching Morgan walk away. The question is, how scared enough to warn Garrett, or scared enough to finally fight back? Could go either way. I know. Clara looked down at Sammy, who was watching her with Daniel's brown eyes. We need to be ready for both. The morning passed in tense silence. Clara stayed in her room, nursing Sammy, staring at the ceiling. Everything she'd owned was gone now. Everything except the clothes on her back and the copies of Margaret's documents hidden in the cradle. She was homeless, penniless, alone. But she was alive. And Sammy was alive. And somewhere in Bozeman, Eli was putting the evidence into the hands of someone who could use it. All she had to do was survive until he got back. Around noon, Aggie brought up a tray of food. You need to eat. I'm not hungry. I don't care. Eat anyway. Aggie set the tray down firmly. Starving yourself won't rebuild your cabin or put Garrett in jail. Clara forced herself to take a bite of bread. It tasted like nothing. Aggie, if something happens to me, don't. I need you to take care of Sammy. Promise me. Aggie's eyes filled with tears. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me. The older woman was quiet for a long moment. I promise, she said finally. But you're going to be fine. You hear me? You're going to be fine. Clara wished she could believe that. The afternoon brought visitors. First came Ruth Ann Perkins, the schoolteacher, a thin woman with kind eyes and steel in her spine. I heard about the fire. She pressed Clara's hand. If you need anything at all, I'm here. Then came Dr. Henry Caldwell, the town doctor, former Union Army surgeon with a limp and a gentle voice. Margaret was my friend, he said quietly. Whatever you need, Mrs. McAllister. Whatever it takes. Then others. The blacksmith. The minister's wife. A rancher's widow who lived at the edge of town. One by one they came to offer support. To stand with Clara against the man who had terrorized their town for 20 years. By evening, Clara had counted 17 visitors. 17 people who were finally ready to fight. This is more than I expected, she admitted to Aggie. Garrett's pushed too far this time, burning your cabin. That crossed a line. Aggie shook her head. Folks are scared of him, but they're also angry. They've been waiting for someone to stand up. You gave them that. I didn't do anything. You refused to run. That's everything. A knock at the door made them both jump. I'll get it. Aggie moved toward the stairs. Stay here. Clara listened to footsteps descending a door opening murmured voices. Then Aggie called up. Clara, you need to come down. Something in her voice made Clara's stomach clench. She carried Sammy downstairs, heart pounding. Lucy Garrett stood in the lobby. Her face was bruised. Her lip was split. Her dress was torn. Oh my God! Clara rushed forward. Lucy, what happened? My father. Lucy's voice was flat. He found out I warned you. How? Doesn't matter. Lucy grabbed Clara's arm. Listen to me. He's coming. Tonight. He's done with lawyers and legal threats. He's going to handle this himself. Clara felt ice spread through her veins. Handle how? He has 6 men. Armed. They're going to take you from this hotel and make you disappear. Lucy's grip tightened. Like he made your aunt disappear. Like he made my mother disappear. Where can I go? Brennan's ranch. It's the only place with enough men to stand against my father. Eli's not there. He went to Bozeman. Then his ranch hands will have to do. Lucy pulled her toward the door. We need to go. Now. Wait. Clara turned to Aggie. Come with us. Someone needs to stay here. Alert the townspeople. Aggie's jaw was set. I'll be fine. Garrett won't hurt me. You don't know that. I know Franklin Garrett. He's a coward and a bully, but he won't risk killing someone the whole town loves. Aggie pushed her toward the door. Go. Protect your son. Clara hesitated for one agonizing moment. Then she ran. Lucy had a horse waiting outside. Clara mounted behind her. Sammy clutched tight to her chest, and they rode hard toward Broken Arrow Ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. Like fire, Clara thought. Like the fire that destroyed my home. They reached the ranch as darkness fell. Lucy rode straight to the main house, where 3 men were gathered on the porch. They looked up in surprise at the 2 women thundering into the yard. Who's in charge here? Lucy demanded, sliding off the horse. A weathered man in his 50s stepped forward. That'd be me. Name's Jesse. I'm Eli's foreman. Good. Franklin Garrett is coming here tonight with 6 armed men. He's going to try to take Mrs. McAllister by force. Jesse's expression hardened. Like hell he is. Can you stop him? We got 4 men including me, plus another 3 at the bunkhouse. Jesse looked at Clara. Miss, I don't know what you did to rile up Garrett, but any enemy of his is a friend of ours. Eli told us to protect you. That's what we're gonna do. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Jesse turned to his men. Sam, ride to the bunkhouse. Get everyone armed and up here. Pete, check the ammunition. We're gonna need every bullet we got. The men scattered. Lucy helped Clara down from the horse. You should get inside. Find a safe place to hide with the baby. No. Clara. I'm done hiding. Clara looked at the ranch house at the men preparing to fight for her. These people are risking their lives. The least I can do is stand with them. You have a baby. Then I'll fight harder. Lucy stared at her for a long moment. Then she laughed, a broken, desperate sound. Margaret was right about you. You're exactly what this town needs. She pulled a pistol from her coat and pressed it into Clara's hand. Do you know how to use this? My father taught me. Good. Lucy's eyes were fierce. Because tonight we end this, one way or another. They waited. Minutes stretched into hours. The ranch hands took positions around the property, rifles ready. Jesse stationed himself on the porch with Clara watching the road. Sammy slept in a makeshift crib inside, guarded by the cook, an older woman named Martha, who had a shotgun and a look that said she knew how to use it. You should sleep, Jesse said quietly. Could be a long night. I couldn't sleep if I wanted to. Fair enough. He spat tobacco juice into the dirt. You really got evidence against Garrett enough to bring him down. Enough to hang him. Jesse nodded slowly. Good. That man's been a stain on this valley too long. My boy worked at his mine 3 years back. There was a cave-in. Garrett didn't even pay for the burial. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be ready. Jesse cocked his rifle. And when the time comes, don't hesitate. Men like Garrett don't deserve hesitation. Clara gripped the pistol Lucy had given her. She'd never killed anyone. Never even pointed a gun at another human being. But tonight, if it meant protecting Sammy, she would do whatever was necessary. The moon was high when they came. "Riders!" someone shouted from the edge of the property. "6 of them coming fast." Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. This was it. Jesse stood up, rifle raised. "Everybody hold, don't fire until I say—" The riders stopped at the edge of the ranch, just visible in the moonlight. Clara could see their shapes dark against the stars. Then a voice rang out. "Brennan's men. This ain't your fight. Hand over the woman and we'll leave peaceful." Jesse spat again. "Garrett's dog. Recognize the voice. His name's Burke. Mean son of a bitch. What do? We don't give him a damn thing." Jesse cupped his hands around his mouth. "Burke, you got 3 seconds to turn around before we start shooting." Laughter from the darkness. 7 against 8. "You sure about those odds, old man?" "Pretty sure." Jesse cocked his rifle. 1, you're making a mistake. 2, Garrett's gonna burn this ranch to the ground. 3. The shot came from somewhere to Clara's left. One of the ranch hands, his aim true. A scream from the darkness. One of Garrett's men fell from his horse. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded from both sides. Clara threw herself flat against the porch, Lucy beside her. Bullets whined overhead, splintering wood. "Stay down!" Jesse was firing rapidly, his face grim. Clara couldn't stay down. She crawled toward the window, peered inside. Martha was crouched by Sammy's crib, shotgun ready. Her son was still sleeping. Somehow, miraculously, still sleeping. A bullet shattered the glass inches from her head. Clara screamed and dropped flat. "We need to move." Lucy grabbed her arm. "Inside now." They scrambled through the door, keeping low. The front room was already filling with gun smoke, the acrid smell burning Clara's eyes. "Martha, is he okay?" "He's fine." The older woman's voice was steady. "Takes more than gunfire to wake this one." The shooting continued. Clara could hear Jesse shouting orders, hear the ranch hands returning fire. But there were more shots coming from the darkness than going out. They were outnumbered. "We can't hold them off forever." Lucy's face was pale. "We need help." As if in answer, Clara heard something new. Hoofbeats. Coming fast. From the opposite direction. "More of Garrett's men," she whispered. Lucy crawled to a window and peered out. Then her face transformed. Relief. Hope. Fierce, desperate joy. "It's Brennan," she shouted. "Eli's back, and he's got men with him." Clara's heart soared. She scrambled to the window and looked out. Eli was riding at the head of a group of riders, a dozen men, maybe more, armed and ready. They swept into the ranch like a thunderstorm, guns blazing. Garrett's men scattered. In minutes, it was over. Clara burst out of the house. Sammy clutched to her chest and ran toward Eli as he dismounted. "Clara!" He caught her in his arms, holding her tight. "Are you hurt?" "Is Sammy?" "We're fine. We're both fine." She was crying. She realized. Crying and laughing at the same time. "You came back." "Of course I came back." Eli pulled away just enough to look at her face, his hands cupping her cheeks. "I told you I would." "How did you know?" "Word reached Bozeman about the cabin fire. I rode through the night." His eyes searched hers. "I thought I was going to lose you." "You didn't." "No." He pulled her close again. "I didn't." Around them, the ranch hands were rounding up Garrett's men, the ones still alive anyway. Clara counted 3 bodies in the dirt. The rest had their hands up. "Where's Burke?" Jesse demanded. "Where's that snake Garrett sent?" "Got away," one of the captured men admitted. "Rode off soon as Brennan showed up." Jesse swore. "He'll go straight to Garrett." "Let him." Eli's voice was hard. The lawyer in Bozeman has the evidence. By morning, every newspaper in Montana will have copies. Federal marshals are already on their way. Lucy stepped forward. It's really happening. He's really going to pay. He's going to pay. Eli looked at her. For everything. Clara saw tears streaming down Lucy's face. My mother, Lucy whispered. He killed my mother. I was 12 years old, and I watched him push her down those stairs, and no one believed me. Everyone said it was an accident. Everyone said I was confused. You weren't confused. Eli's voice was gentle. And now everyone's going to know the truth. Lucy broke down, then sobbing like a child. Clara went to her, wrapping her arms around the woman who had been her enemy's daughter and had become her ally. It's over, Clara murmured. It's finally over. But she was wrong. The shot came from nowhere. One moment Lucy was crying in Clara's arms. The next she jerked violently, a red stain spreading across her chest. Clara screamed. Lucy crumpled to the ground. Sniper! Eli shoved Clara behind him, shielding her with his body. On the ridge. There. More shots cracked through the darkness. The ranch hands scattered, taking cover. Clara dropped to her knees beside Lucy. Lucy, stay with me. Lucy's eyes were wide, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Blood bubbled at her lips. Tell them, she whispered. Tell them what he did. Promise me. You're going to tell them yourself. You're going to... Promise me. Clara grabbed her hand. I promise. Lucy smiled. A small, sad smile. And then the light faded from her eyes. Clara screamed again, a raw animal sound of grief and rage. Around her the gunfire continued, but she didn't move. Couldn't move. She just knelt there in the dirt, holding Lucy's hand, watching the blood pool beneath the woman who had risked everything to help her. Then Eli was there, pulling her up. Clara, we have to move. Lucy, she's gone. I'm sorry, but she's gone. His voice was ragged. Please, I can't lose you too. Clara let him lead her away. But something had changed inside her. Fear was gone. Grief was a distant roar. All that remained was cold, hard fury. Franklin Garrett had taken her aunt, her home, her sense of safety. Now he'd taken Lucy. No more. No more running. No more hiding. No more waiting for lawyers and marshals. This ended tonight. Clara pulled away from Eli. Where are you going? To finish this. Clara? He's out there. She pointed toward the ridge where the shots had come from. Garrett. He came to watch, to make sure the job got done. You can't... Watch me. She grabbed a rifle from one of the fallen men and started walking toward the ridge. Eli caught her arm. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe. Clara met his eyes. But I'd rather die fighting than live knowing I let him walk away. For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Eli nodded. Together then. He took her hand, and together they walked into the darkness. The ridge was steep and dark. Clara climbed with the rifle clutched in her hands, Eli beside her, both of them moving by moonlight and fury alone. There. Eli pointed to a cluster of rocks near the top. That's where the shots came from. They approached slowly, carefully. Clara's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. A figure emerged from behind the rocks. Franklin Garrett. He looked different now. The polished businessman was gone. His suit was rumpled, his hair wild, his eyes gleaming with something that looked like madness. And he had a pistol pointed directly at Clara's chest. That's far enough. Clara stopped. Eli tensed beside her. You killed your own daughter. Clara's voice shook with rage. Your own flesh and blood. She betrayed me. Garrett's voice was eerily calm. Just like her mother, just like everyone else. She tried to do the right thing. She tried to destroy me. Garrett laughed, a hollow, broken sound. 20 years I've built this empire. 20 years of planning and sacrifice and doing what needed to be done. And she would have thrown it all away for what justice? He spat the word like a curse. That's exactly what you're going to face. Eli's voice was ice. The evidence is already in the hands of federal authorities. Newspapers across Montana are printing the story as we speak. It's over, Garrett. You're finished. Maybe. Garrett's aim shifted slightly toward Eli. But I can still take you with me. You won't make it off this ridge alive, Clara said. There are a dozen armed men at the ranch. They'll hunt you down. Then we'll call it a draw. Garrett smiled his snake smile. You took everything from me. It's only fair I take something from you. His finger tightened on the trigger. Clara moved without thinking. She threw herself sideways, crashing into Eli just as the gun fired. They hit the ground together, rolling down the slope. The bullet whined past, missing by inches. Eli recovered first, raising his rifle. But Garrett was already running, scrambling over the rocks toward the far side of the ridge. Stay here. Eli took off after him. Like hell. Clara grabbed her rifle and followed. The chase led them through rocky terrain and scraggly trees. Clara's lungs burned, her legs screamed for rest, but she didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Not until this was finished. She heard shouts ahead. A gunshot. Another. Then silence. Clara burst through a line of brush and stopped dead. Eli stood at the edge of a cliff, his rifle aimed down. Below him, clinging to a narrow ledge, was Franklin Garrett. Help me! Garrett's voice was high with terror. For God's sake, help me! Eli didn't move. You murdered my father! His voice was calm, deadly calm. You murdered Sarah. You murdered Margaret. You murdered your own daughter. I had to. They were going to ruin everything. They were going to stop you. That's not the same thing. Garrett's grip slipped. He scrambled for purchase fingers, clawing at the rock. Please, I'll confess. I'll tell them everything. Just don't let me fall. Clara reached Eli's side. She looked down at the man who had terrorized this valley for 20 years. The man who had killed her aunt, who had burned her home, who had tried to take everything from her. Part of her wanted to watch him fall. Eli. She touched his arm. Don't. He looked at her eyes blazing. He deserves to die. Maybe. But not like this. Clara met his gaze. If you let him fall, you become like him. You become a killer. Is that what Sarah would have wanted? Is that what your father would have wanted? Eli's jaw clenched. Don't do it for him, Clara continued. Do it for you. For the man you want to be. For the life you want to have. Silence stretched between them. Then Eli lowered his rifle. Give me your hand. Garrett reached up desperate. Eli grabbed his wrist and hauled him up onto solid ground. The moment Garrett was safe, Eli slammed him face first into the dirt. Don't move. Don't even breathe. He looked at Clara. Go back to the ranch. Tell Jesse to bring rope. We're taking this piece of trash to jail. Clara nodded and ran. By the time she returned with Jesse and 3 other ranch hands, dawn was breaking. Garrett was still face down in the dirt, Eli's boot on his back. They bound his hands and hauled him to his feet. Franklin Garrett, Jesse said with grim satisfaction. You're under arrest for murder, arson, and about a dozen other things I'm gonna enjoy watching you hang for. Garrett said nothing. His eyes were empty, defeated. The fight was finally over. They brought Garrett back to Silver Creek as the sun rose over the mountains. Word spread quickly. By the time they reached the main street, half the town was gathered to watch. Clara saw faces she recognized: the banker, the general store owner, the minister. People who had lived in fear of this man for 20 years. Now they watched him walk past in chains. Sheriff Morgan was waiting in front of his office. His face was pale, his hands shaking. I'll take him from here. Like hell you will. Jesse stepped forward. You're as dirty as he is, Morgan, Everyone knows it. I can explain. Save it for the judge. A new voice cut through the crowd. A man in a federal marshal's uniform pushed his way to the front. Behind him came 3 more deputies, all armed. Marshal Thomas Drake out of Helena. He showed his badge. I've got warrants for Franklin Garrett, Sheriff Hank Morgan, and about 6 other men in this town. He looked at Morgan with disgust. You can come quietly, or you can come in pieces. Your choice. Morgan's shoulders slumped. Quietly. I'll come quietly. The marshal nodded to his deputies. Take them both. We'll sort out the details in Helena. As Garrett was led away, he passed Clara. He stopped, looked at her with those empty eyes. You think you've won, he said quietly, but this land will destroy you. It destroys everyone eventually. Clara stepped closer, so close she could smell the fear on him. My aunt survived 15 years on this land. My son will survive 60 more. She smiled coldly. That's your legacy, Garrett. Not empire, not power, just a woman and a baby who refused to break. Garrett said nothing. The deputies shoved him forward and he was gone. Clara watched until they disappeared around the corner. Then she let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for days. Arms wrapped around her from behind. It's over. Eli's voice was rough in her ear. It's really over. Clara turned in his embrace, pressing her face against his chest. Lucy, we need to... The boys are bringing her down. We'll give her a proper burial, next to her mother. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. She saved my life. She saved Sammy's life. And I couldn't... You did everything you could. Eli tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. She knew the risks. She chose to help anyway. That's who she was. It's not fair. No, it ain't. Eli wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. But fair don't run the world. Never has. All we can do is fight for what's right and hope that counts for something. Clara closed her eyes. She was exhausted. Bone-deep exhausted. The past 4 days had taken everything from her, her home, her security, her innocence. She'd lost things she could never get back. But she'd also gained something. Purpose. Community. People who would fight beside her. And this man standing in the morning light holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Clara. Eli's voice was soft, uncertain. I know this ain't the right time. I know you've been through hell and back, but I need you to know something. She opened her eyes. What? I love you. The words hung in the air between them. I know it's crazy. Eli continued, the words tumbling out like he couldn't stop them. I know we only met 4 days ago. I know you're still grieving your husband and I'm still carrying ghosts of my own. But when I thought Garrett was going to, when I thought I might lose you... He stopped, swallowed hard. I realized I'd rather spend whatever time I have left on this earth loving you than spend another day alone. Even if you don't feel the same. Even if you need time. Even if... Clara kissed him. It wasn't like the kiss before, quick and fierce and desperate. This one was slow. Deep. A promise. When they finally pulled apart, Eli's eyes were bright. Does that mean... It means I love you too, you stubborn man. Clara laughed through her tears. Against all reason. Against all common sense. I love you. Eli's face transformed. The shadows lifted. The grief retreated. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked truly, completely happy. Marry me. Clara's heart stopped. What? Marry me. Eli took her hands in his. I know it's too fast. I know people will talk. I don't care. I want to spend my life with you. I want to be a father to Sammy. I want to build something real, something lasting, with you. Clara looked into his eyes, those gray-blue eyes that had found her in the blizzard, that had watched over her through danger and darkness, that now held more hope than she'd ever seen in them. "Yes," she whispered. Eli blinked. "Yes. Yes." Clara laughed. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to build a life with you. Yes to all of it." Eli let out a whoop that echoed down the street and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around, while the townspeople watched and cheered. For the first time in months, maybe years, Clara felt truly, completely alive. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Franklin Garrett's trial made headlines across Montana and beyond. The evidence Margaret had gathered, combined with testimony from Lucy's letters and statements from townspeople who finally found the courage to speak, was overwhelming. He was convicted on 3 counts of murder and sentenced to hang. Sheriff Morgan was stripped of his badge and given 10 years in prison for obstruction of justice. The businesses Garrett had controlled were seized and sold. The money was distributed among his victims, including a substantial sum to Clara for the destruction of her cabin. More importantly, the water rights that Garrett had spent 20 years trying to control were restored to their rightful owners. The ranchers of Silver Creek could finally breathe easy. Clara used her portion of the settlement to rebuild Margaret's cabin, bigger this time, with room for a growing family. The townspeople came together to help just as they had when Margaret first arrived 30 years before. "Never seen anything like it," Jesse said, watching the work proceed. Folks who wouldn't look at each other a month ago are now sharing tools and swapping stories. "That's what happens when you stop being afraid," Clara replied, Sammy bouncing on her hip. "You remember your neighbors." The wedding took place in late spring, when the snow had melted and the wildflowers were blooming. The whole town turned out. Aggie cried. Ruth Ann Perkins read a poem. Dr. Caldwell gave a toast that made everyone laugh. Clara walked down the aisle in the same blue silk dress she'd worn to Garrett's dinner, now altered with white lace by Aggie's skilled hands. Sammy rode on her hip, watching the proceedings with wide, curious eyes. And waiting for her at the altar was Eli. He'd cleaned up again, suit white shirt hair combed back. But this time, there was no discomfort in his posture, only joy. "You came," he murmured as she reached him. "Did you doubt it?" "Every second until I saw you walk through that door." Clara smiled. "Then I guess you'll have to get used to being surprised." The minister cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was simple. The vows were traditional. But when Eli slipped the ring on Clara's finger, his mother's ring saved for 30 years, she felt the weight of history settling around them. Not just their history, the history of this land. The people who had fought and died to build something here. Margaret, Lucy, Patrick, Sarah. All of them woven into the fabric of this moment. "I now pronounce you man and wife." Eli kissed her, and the church erupted in cheers. That night they sat on the porch of their new home, the cabin Clara had rebuilt on Margaret's land, expanded now to include room for children. Sammy was asleep inside. The moon was full. The spring air smelled of pine and possibility. "Do you ever think about what would have happened?" Eli asked quietly, "if I hadn't found you that night?" "Sometimes." Clara leaned against his shoulder. "I try not to. I think about it all the time." His arm tightened around her. "I think about how close I came to losing you, before I even knew what I was losing." "But you didn't lose me." "No, I didn't." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "And I never will. I promise you that." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. "What are you thinking about?" Eli asked after a while. "The future." Clara smiled. "For the first time in years, I'm actually looking forward to it." Yeah. She turned to face him. "I'm thinking about Sammy growing up on this land, learning to ride, learning to work, becoming the kind of man his father would have been proud of. Daniel." "Both of them." Clara took Eli's hand. "You're his father now too, in every way that matters. Eli's eyes glistened. I'll try to be worthy of that. You already are. She kissed him softly. When they pulled apart, Eli was smiling. What else are you thinking about? I'm thinking about more babies. Clara grinned at his startled expression. Lots more. Enough to fill this whole house. Is that so? That's so. She stood and pulled him to his feet. Starting tonight if you're willing. Eli laughed a real full laugh that echoed across the valley. Mrs. Brennan, he said, sweeping her into his arms. I am most definitely willing. He carried her inside and kicked the door shut behind them. 5 years later, the valley had transformed. Silver Creek was no longer a town held hostage by fear. It was thriving new businesses, new families, new hope. The railroad had come through the previous year, bringing prosperity and connection to the wider world. Clara stood at the window of her home, watching the chaos unfold in the yard below. Sammy, now 6 years old, was teaching his younger sister Emily how to throw a lasso. Emily was 4, a firecracker, with her mother's auburn hair and her father's stubborn streak. And in Clara's arms was the newest addition, Thomas Daniel Brennan, 3 weeks old and already showing signs of being as demanding as his siblings. Mama, Emily's not listening. Emily, listen to your brother. I don't want to learn ropes, I want to ride horses. Clara sighed. You can ride horses after you learn ropes. But that's not fair. Life's not fair. Ask your father. As if summoned, Eli rode into the yard dusty from a day of checking fences. His face lit up when he saw his family. Trouble. Always. Clara smiled as he dismounted and climbed the porch steps. How were the fences? Holding. He kissed her, then looked down at Thomas. How's my boy? Hungry, loud, demanding. Clara handed the baby to him. Like his father. I resent that. But Eli was grinning as he cradled his son. I ain't loud. Tell that to the coyotes you scared off last week. Eli laughed and kissed her again. In the yard, Sammy had given up on rope lessons and was now chasing Emily in circles while she shrieked with laughter. Clara leaned against her husband and watched her children play. Do you ever regret it? Eli asked quietly. Coming here. Everything that happened. Clara thought about it. The blizzard, the terror, the fight, the loss. Then she thought about what she'd gained. A home, a family, a community that stood together instead of apart. A love she hadn't known was possible. No, she said, not for a single second. Eli's arm tightened around her. Me neither. They stood together in the fading light, watching their children holding their baby, surrounded by everything they'd built. 5 years ago, Clara had walked through a blizzard with a dying baby in her arms, certain she was going to die. Instead, she had found everything she'd ever wanted. A home, a purpose, a man who loved her without limits, and a future as wide and bright as the Montana sky. The storm had nearly killed her, but in the end it had given her everything. And that was more than enough. That evening, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Clara sat at her desk and opened Margaret's journal. She'd read it dozens of times over the years. The words were familiar now, like old friends. But tonight, she turned to a blank page at the back, and she began to write. To my children and their children after them. This is the story of how our family came to be. It began with a blizzard, a baby, and a scarred cowboy who said 4 words that changed everything. Give him to me. I hope when you read this, you understand what those words really meant. They meant courage. They meant sacrifice. They meant love. They meant that even in the darkest, coldest night, there is always hope. There is always someone willing to fight for you. There is always a way forward. Remember that. No matter what storms you face, no matter how lost you feel, remember that your great-grandmother walked through a blizzard with a baby in her arms and refused to die. Remember that your grandfather rode through that same storm and refused to let her. Remember that love is stronger than fear, stronger than hate, stronger than anything. And remember this above all else. You come from survivors. Act like it. Clara set down her pen and closed the journal. In the bedroom, Eli was waiting. In the nursery, Thomas was sleeping. Down the hall, Sammy and Emily dreamed their young dreams. And outside, the Montana wind whispered through the pines, carrying the echoes of all who had come before. Margaret, Lucy, Patrick, Sarah, all of them part of this story. All of them woven into the fabric of this family. Clara walked to the window and looked out at the land. Her land, her children's land, her children's children's land. 5 years ago, she had arrived here with nothing. Now she had everything. And it had all begun with a stranger's voice cutting through a storm. "Give him to me. I'll keep him warm." 4 words that changed everything. 4 words that built a legacy. 4 words that proved once and for all that love was the only thing worth fighting for. Clara smiled and turned away from the window. Her family was waiting. And she had a lifetime of love to give them.